Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Universal Journey Show with your hosts, Dr. Brenda L. and Donny Winter. We are in person doing it today. Isn't that exciting? Universal Journeys is about how creativity and spirituality intersects with every aspect of our lives, even when we do not see it or realize it.
Sure.
And oftentimes, our show delves into subjects regarding activism, and today's show is definitely going to be a prime example of that. I can't remember the rest of the intro, so oh well. So we're just going with the flow today. That's what we're doing.
That's weird.
So before we get started, though, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am.
This is like totally awesome.
I know, right? It's really fun doing it live and in person, because normally we're used to trying to coordinate it.
What is it? Thousands of miles away?
Hundreds of miles away.
Oh, I'd say thousands, anyways. It feels like
after the drive last night, it felt like thousands of miles away. But today, well, we figured we would do a subject about what's happening in the world of politics at the moment, especially in our own country. So the title is Trumping the Deceptive Political Rhetoric, which I'm hopefully sure that made a few people laugh out loud. I'm hoping it did. Really. It made me laugh out loud, but that's just me. But a lot of people have noticed that in the news there is almost always some form of political discussion about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Bernie or any of the, presidential candidates right now. Mm-hmm. And for this show, I think it's particularly important that we talk about, especially what's been going on with Donald Trump and how a lot of people are falling into the manipulative rhetoric and not being able to see through it clearly. One thing that Brenda and I have learned, well, Brenda's learned this, I'm still kind of learning it, is being able to see through things and be able to perceive what's going on underneath the surface. Because usually when there are manipulative situations like this that happen, it suggests that there is some form of distraction, like someone is distracting you from seeing the big picture. What do you think about that, Brenda? I know you've told me something like that before.
Well, and that's the thing is there's some underlying thing that's happening with all of the rhetoric, as you call it, with the just like right there.
The deceptive rhetoric.
Yeah, the deceptive rhetoric of the campaigns. And it's very possible that Donald Trump is being in the forefront with all of this so that someone else on the other side has an opportunity to come in and sweep it all away. But yet a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing and saying and everything else reminds me of the Hitler tactics. And it's been coming slowly throughout the years of becoming more and more like Hitler and what he did with the borders and everything else. And that's what we're doing with Homeland Security. That's actually where it actually started, was through Homeland Security. So, and Donald Trump is like right there, but he's feeding into all of that energy and that anger and, so that's not good. That's not good.
No, it isn't. And a lot of people, I know an alarming amount of people who support him, and usually the primary reason they say that they support him is because he is honest and he doesn't put up with crap. And I'm like, I'm honest and I don't put up with crap, but I'm not, being hateful to people. Mm-hmm. But see, the thing is, what seems to distract many people with Donald Trump's strategy is the fact that he is appealing to people's anger. He knows the specific trigger that gets people on his same wavelength. And once people get on that same wavelength, they can't expand their perceptions beyond that.
Well, and he's appealing to their emotional states because everyone is upset and just uptight about what's happening in the country and what's happening to them throughout the years. So Donald Trump is talking their talk, but he's not walking their walk. And that's the issue right there. And he really doesn't have a platform per se that he is running for. He's just saying what he wants to say and how he wants to say it. But really, do you want a candidate that actually does that? I mean, or do you want someone who is actually out there and they're saying, okay, let's do this. Let's be this political correct person and diplomat, because he's not a diplomat. He's a bully. He's not a diplomat. And when you're dealing with people in different countries and stuff like that, you need to be more diplomatic, and he's not doing it.
You know, I think it's very interesting that you mentioned the whole political correctness, because that is, again, one of his other another point that people often mention with regard to why they support him. And, you know, and I understand the annoyance with our politically correct culture, but let me explain something first. We live in a culture that is more aware of people's feelings, emotions, and situations. And I think that's why we have that sense of political correctness, is because we've been incorporating people's voices. We've been allowing people to be heard, and we have been preventing people from being silenced. Well, trying to prevent people from being silenced. And I really get upset with the whole political correctness thing, because that suggests to me that people are not aware that we have come so far when it comes to that important communication. And I think it's important for us to be aware of how we talk to other people and how we treat other people. Like, I don't really think that is, I mean, that's my personal view, though. Like, I don't think that is necessarily a negative thing.
The thing with all of this is, yes, we have to say what's on our mind, but there are many different ways that one can accomplish that. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to bully. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Now, am I talking about being peace loving, everything else? Not to the extent that most people would say, oh, you're a tree hugger type of deal. To be honest with you, yes, I am a little bit, but not to the extent that say, okay, I can't see beyond all this rhetoric that's going on. And people are being blinded by the charisma that Donald Trump offers or has. So, and he, like I said, he's touching on that emotional chord, and we need to watch that. We need to be able to step back out of the situation, out of that energy, and say, okay, what is he really going for? What is he really telling us that he can do? And speaking of do, really, this is a bunch of bull that they're talking right now, because once they get in, sorry, dudettes, they can't do anything, because they are controlled by those who are already in power.
Yeah, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that, yes, a president can do a lot of things, but you also have to take into consideration Congress, too. Congress is definitely a variable.
Right.
So, and I know I've made videos supporting Bernie Sanders because I voted for Bernie Sanders, but I also, in my mind, have this realistic idea that even if he does get elected as president, he's probably not going to be able to implement all the things that he wants to implement right off the bat. Like, one must be realistic. And I think this is where that disconnect comes in with a lot of Donald Trump supporters, because a lot of people expect, oh, let's build a wall and do it instantly. No preparation, nothing like that. Make Mexico pay for it. Like, how, like, and he hasn't really provided that much of a concrete explanation as to how he would get a foreign country to pay for a wall. And that's what I try to tell people, that, you know, yes, a person can be very convincing, a person can seem very persuasive, but if they're not going to back up what they're saying with some, you know, examples or explanations, how is that person's stance considered valuable? Like, how is it considered reliable?
Well, really, you can say that about all of the candidates right now, to a degree. Really, I'm not for one or the other, but Donald Trump definitely concerns me with what he's doing and the followers that he has, inciting riots or chaos or bullying. You know, like, get him out, you know.
You know, that's actually an interesting point that you made there, because of course in the news lately there's been a lot of talk about the protests at his rallies, like the one in St. Louis and the one in Chicago. And immediately I remember Donald Trump flat out saying, like, oh, they were Bernie Sanders supporters, it's his fault. So, regardless the political affiliation of the protesters, by placing blame immediately on another person is telling me that this individual in question does not know how to take responsibility for anything. And that I think is also something that concerns me, because that is a learned behavior. People who support that type of mindset end up learning to use that type of mindset for themselves in day-to-day life as well. So I guess my point with that is, yes, it's important for the protesters to not be violent, which they were, which I don't agree with. But you also have to keep in mind the source of this hatred that has kind of caused this kind of uproar and hatred on all sides of the situation. And this wouldn't be happening if it was not for that deceptively political rhetoric coming from Donald Trump.
Well, in his party. It's just not him, it's his whole party. His whole party kind of got in on it. Just kind of crazy.
Marco Rubio.
I know. I was like, really?
Oh, this is going to be really blunt, but I'm sorry. If there are presidential candidates up on stage debating the size of their PPs, that tells me that this is not serious in general. So, because obviously there was that huge hullabaloo about Donald Trump's hand size and Marco Rubio making fun of it. And then I'm just like, really? Like, I want you guys to talk about the current issues, not, if that is an issue, that should be something dealt with on your own time, not on a political platform stage.
True.
And red.
Well, if they're doing that here, what are they going to do when it comes to foreign policies and what they're going to do when it comes to foreign countries? You know, we have a lot at stake right now, and especially the way that the other countries are looking at us. You know, are we really serious about what we want to do or what we're doing? And, you know, and if we have Donald Trump to come in and he does what he does, I mean, he can't hold his tongue. He doesn't know how to hold his tongue. You know, talk about this the slight example. It's like when the Pope first came to become Pope, and all of his bodyguards and everything else, because he was so spontaneous. He went out in the crowds, and he had an issue with, or his bodyguards had an issue with him by just taking off and doing whatever. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. You have a protocol here. You have a set guidelines that you're supposed to follow. And as you could tell, Pope has done that. I mean, he's followed suit. Well, this is what Donald Trump has to think about too, because no longer is Donald Trump a businessman. He doesn't own his own corporation. He doesn't, you know, or business. He doesn't own that. He doesn't own the United States. So he's going to have to fall in line with everybody else. If he can't fall in line, then what's going to happen? He's going to quit. It's like, oh, I can't do this. And off he goes. You know, that's his MO. That's his MO, guys. You have to think about that too. So you have the Bernie Sanders, and you have Hillary Clinton, and who is the guy from Ohio?
John Kasich.
John Kasich. Okay, you have those guys that are like, okay,
Ted Cruz. Can't forget him.
Yeah, no, we're not even talking about Ted Cruz after that comment. That shows. Never mind. Anyhow, so you have those individuals who will stand up there and they will talk about what should be done and what could be done. And they are the type of individuals who can actually fit into the role model that is expected of them. Donald Trump, on the other hand, I don't know if he can. I don't know how people are taking him serious. He talks a good talk, but the thing is, he's not walking the walk. And that's what you need for this country. You need to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk, same thing. Yeah, there's some things that goes on behind the scenes and stuff that we don't know. That's always been that way forever. Okay. And you're still going to get that, but you really need to step back and look at everything. Yes. Hillary Clinton, she had some issues back there when she was Secretary of State and things like that, but everybody does. This is just a political game, and if you think that these campaigners are out there campaigning and they're going to make it right and they're going to do this and this and this, think again, because they can't. They can only do what they're allowed to do. They may get bits and pieces of what they stated that they were going to do during their presidency, but 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be all of it. They're going to be vetoed.
Exactly. Another thing that has surprised me is that not only are people saying that, oh, it's because of Donald Trump's bluntness that I like him, but they're also saying, well, I know he will defeat ISIS. Okay.
No.
I understand the importance of that issue as well. But when deciding a president, that's not, you can't be focusing on one issue. You cannot be focusing on his bluntness. You can't be focusing on just whether or not his foreign policy is strong. Foreign policy encompasses more than just waging war on groups of people.
Correct.
It also encompasses diplomatic situations, interactions with other countries.
Correct.
And with his mindset, his very xenophobic mindset, the build a wall around everything we don't like.
Which goes back to the Hitler tactics.
Right, exactly.
With borders.
Like based on that whole mindset, that suggests to me that if he were to be elected as president, our relationships with our allies and with other countries would fall to the wayside entirely.
Right.
And I think one of the most important strengths our country has are our allies.
Very much so. It's been that way throughout the years. I mean, if we have someone like Trump and he goes off like a maverick and goes, wherever he wants to go, or rogue, I should say, and he's not paying attention to all the stuff that needs to be done, we could be the laughing stock of the world. And then guess what? We fall from number one to a third world country. And that's kind of where we're headed anyways.
Exactly.
I've been saying that for years. So it's just like, prepare yourself. And this is like that next step. So, and there's a prophecy out there that I read the other day. And the prophecy says the last president was or is a black man. So does that mean that our last true president is Obama? Think about that.
Where did you get that prophecy? That sounds interesting. It sounds familiar too.
Yeah, it was something I ran across the other day. And I was like, that's interesting. And it was from a nun, believe it or not. So you know how pious they are.
Yeah.
Which can be very much.
And see, the thing is, I think what a lot of people, regardless who they're supporting, they just need to know that it's important to listen to their intuition. And people will flat out say that they don't have it, that intuition is something that's fake. If you encounter something that gives you a good or negative feeling about something, that's your intuition talking to you.
Absolutely.
That's you perceiving something. And immediately, as soon as Donald Trump announced that he was going to run as president, my intuition started being all like, and I was just like, well, in my mind, I'm like, he's very good at acting. Well, I wouldn't say good at acting, but he is very good at putting on a facade. He's very good at misleading. He's very good at directing people's attentions to the mundane and to the frivolous. That spells bad news because a lot of people fall into those traps. A lot of people fall victim to that type of deception.
Right. And if he continues to do what he's doing, and if he does become president, then you have martial law. And then martial law comes in effect, and guess what? Your rights are going to start being taken away. So it's really, you really have to look at what it is all about and not just jump in and say, yeah, he's talking my talk. Well, he may be talking your talk, but he's not walking a walk. And a walk is helping every single individual within the United States, no matter if they're white, black, Chinese, red man, no matter what, Native American, it doesn't matter. He is here to protect everyone, Muslims to be included. So, you could be talking a talk, but you got to walk that walk. And if you're talking already to put up borders and keep people out and stuff like that, that's not a good talk.
Another thing that really concerns me is, we see all of this discussion of, well, especially, I think, was it the St. Louis one that was canceled, the rally, or was it the Chicago one? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was the Chicago one. Well, one of his rallies was canceled because of protests. And Donald Trump flat out said, these people protesting are are, interfering with my freedom of speech. And I just find it ironic that he says this, yet when people are protesting him, say in his rallies, he immediately silences them and dismisses them.
Right. So whose freedom of speech is being curtailed there?
So to me, I mean, it's very one-sided. Like if it doesn't appeal to him, then it's not important. If it doesn't align with what he thinks, it's not important to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very destructive. When you remove the rights of an individual, even if it's freedom of speech like that, it has a domino effect. You destroy one right, what's to prevent other ones from being destroyed from here on out?
Well, like I said, that goes right back to the Hitler thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching this for several years, and it's like it's getting closer and closer. So we really got to look at history, and most of the time people don't. History is where we always repeat ourselves, and that's where we can get clues to the next thing that's going to happen or is a possibility. The Bushes were behind Hitler. I'm telling you, they
Mm-hmm.
bought a lot of stuff that Hitler had taken or his troops had taken away from the Jews. So this is going to be a first, whoever gets it for this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
First woman, first Jew, first, what is Rubio?
Hispanic.
Mm-hmm. And then of course you have Donald Trump. He's just the first of something. Sorry.
No, you're right. You and I are in agreement. Whether or not anybody watching is in agreement, that's their choice. But,
right.
But the thing is, again, I was watching a YouTube video the other day of someone was recording people leaving one of Donald Trump's rallies. And one of the people leaving his rally told the person holding the camera to go back to Auschwitz.
Oh.
And I immediately was flabbergasted by this type of comment. And it tells me that they don't, like, people who support him, not all, I'm sure not all are included in this,
Mm-hmm.
but people like this individual in question don't care about history as long as it appeals to their own few little desires in a president, the desire to overcome that political correctness and the desire to to remove themselves from other countries and to distance other countries. And that is scary.
I have a question for you. Out of all the people who support Donald Trump and are at his rallies, how many of them are white? How many of them are black? Or how many of them are Caucasian? Or not Caucasian, but how many of them are of other descents? Or
Honestly,
are they mostly whites?
From what I've seen on TV, from the media's perspective, all I see are whites.
See, you have an issue there, because whites, they think
Mm-hmm.
that they're superior to everyone. So they're like, they have to get that back. And Donald Trump is going for them. So even though we're afraid that Donald Trump's going to go ahead and get the presidency, there are less whites than there are everyone else. So
Mm-hmm.
think about that too.
Right. This is true.
Okay. So who's ever appealing to the blacks or and I say that incorrectly, but or the Hispanics or
Mm-hmm.
all the rest of them, they're the ones that are going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying who I'm for. We're just kind of like doing the talking. I know Donnie's already mentioned who he's for. But I'm just trying to keep an open mind and look at the whole perspective.
Right.
Look at everybody.
And see, the thing is, I'm pretty open-minded too. Like, honestly, if Bernie Sanders doesn't win the nomination, I'm going to be open-minded about who does get selected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have my issues with Hillary too, but we could get into that in another situation. We don't have enough time for that. But I do think it's important to be open-minded and to examine different perspectives. But in examining Donald Trump, the primary thing that I see is his need to silence groups of people. And when a presidential candidate is in that type of mindset, that suggests to me that he is definitely not presidential material whatsoever.
Well, you could have a really bad situation if that was the case. If he does that when he becomes president, or if he becomes president, if you have that same mindset and the government backs him, or the people of the government backs him, you talk about black ops and everything else, you're not going to have any freedom of speech. You're not going to have anything. They're going to come out with, I want to say whips and chains, but that's not correct. They might do that, but with their machine guns and tell you what you can do, what you can't do. And then it's like, okay, you guys wanted your freedom of speech. Guess what? You think you have it? You don't. So those are all major things that you need to look at. You need to look and say, okay, who really is one that I would support, or that would support the United States? And it's got to be everybody. Even the candidates, all the candidates, okay, have an issue with one group or another. Okay, think about that. And then also look into what you can deal with or handle or want to deal with, and what you don't. And then go from there. Do your homework. Okay. Just don't go by what the media is saying, because the media will give you anything and everything. Who knows? You could be at a Donald Trump assembly, okay, and then you see thousands of people. They can make it look like they can make it look bigger than what that is. They can make it look 10,000 people. So it's just look at how many times those pictures are actually shown over and over again. Is it the same spot? Is it at all the group, or is it just a portion of the group? Because if it's only a portion, guess what? They're covering up something.
If anybody is a Donald Trump supporter and they're watching this right now, I want to give you this idea here. I mean, we all see that Donald Trump frequently criticizes the media, saying that the media is misleading, the media is being manipulative. In all honesty, though, when you look at it in a retrospective standpoint, isn't that essentially what Donald Trump is doing?
Technically.
The exact same thing that he is criticizing. And a lot of people side with him because it's an individual saying this, not a larger group. But it doesn't matter if it's an individual. It's still destructive.
But the thing is, you think about that. He says that the media is this and this and this, but yet who is the media following the most?
He's manipulated the media.
Well, they're following him because hey, he's news. He's like causing chaos, and the media likes chaos. If you go back to ISIS wouldn't have even been out there if the media would not have picked up on them and said, hey, you're going to be prime time, and here you go. And all of a sudden, guess what? They're bigger than life when they were really itty bitty at the beginning. It's like, the media does that stuff to us. So it's propaganda. Propaganda gets you. It can get you. Right. So you have to be careful with that.
And by media, we're not just referring to the news either. We're referring to YouTube also. How many of these candidates have used social media as a means to communicate with audiences or to convey their points of view? Like it's something that is all encompassing. It's not just limited to the news media. It's encompassing of all media. And I just want people to be aware. Like, I think if there is any primary point that Brenda and I are trying to convey, be aware, listen to your intuition, and do not be afraid to ask questions. A lot of people blindly follow without asking questions. Questions help us become wiser ourselves.
Or do your research.
Or do research. Like, it doesn't hurt expanding your pool of knowledge. Anyway, we are down to our last minute here. So first of all, thank you everyone for watching. We really appreciate it. We felt it important to do a video about this subject because Brenda and I are all about trying to see things clearly and from multiple different perspectives. If you like watching our videos, please leave a comment in the comment section below. Explain to us what you think. Even if you do not agree with us, we are open to all perspectives.
Absolutely.
Also subscribe to our channel. We do episodes of Universal Journeys every first and third Sunday each month. And we will be explaining more topics that we will be talking about in the near future. Feel free to go like our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/Universal Journeys 111. Or if you go to Facebook and type in Universal Journeys, you should be able to find our page there.
Absolutely.
Any parting words, Brenda?
You betcha. I always have parting words. Don't forget, through all the things that we said today or anytime, follow your heart, for only you know which path is right for you. Thank you. Have a great week, everyone.
Love you.
Love you too.